Paralyzed Count was humiliated at a royal ball. The waitress did something that changed everything. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The first thing Marguerite noticed was how quickly a room could decide who mattered. Versailles glittered because it had to. The music swelled because it was paid to. The laughter rose because no one wished to be seen without it. And the servants, like Marguerite, moved as if they were part of the floor itself. Quiet, useful, unremembered. Eyes down, Madame Sabine had warned her before the doors opened. Hands steady, mouth closed. If you are spoken to, you answer. If you are not spoken to, you do not exist. Marguerite had nodded because nodding was safer than words. Now she crossed the edge of the grand salon with a silver tray balanced on her palm. Crystal glasses trembled softly with each step, as if they too feared making a sound. She kept her gaze low, but not so low that she would collide with brocade skirts and polished shoes. "From Burgundy, is it?" a footman had teased earlier, not kindly. "Yes," she had answered. "Then remember your place. The court is not a village fair." She remembered it now. She remembered everything. The sharpness beneath politeness. The way a smile could be a command. A gentleman brushed past her and did not apologize. A ladies' fan snapped open like a verdict. Marguerite slipped between them, offering champagne to a pair of young nobles who were not much older than she was, yet carried themselves as if God had personally signed their names. "No, not that one of them said, pointing without looking at Marguerite's face. "The other bottle. This one is too common." "It is the same vintage, monsieur," Marguerite replied before she could stop herself. The noble turned his head at last. He stared as if a chair had spoken. Madame Sabine appeared at Marguerite's elbow like a shadow that could pinch. "My apologies, monsieur," Sabine said smoothly. "The girl is new." Marguerite lowered her eyes. "Yes, monsieur, forgive me," the noble sniffed. "See that you remain new then. It will be less embarrassing." Sabine guided Marguerite away with fingers that did not bruise, but still hurt. "Do not correct them. Not even gently." "I did not mean—" "You meant truth," Sabine murmured. "Truth is not served here. Wine is served. Now go." Marguerite returned to the flow of the room, cheeks warm, throat tight. She told herself she was only here for wages, for bread, for the chance to send coins home. She told herself she would be invisible. And then the doors opened again, and invisibility became impossible. A ripple ran through the music. Not a pause, not a mistake, but a shift. Heads turned with the same trained grace, as if the entire court shared one neck. Marguerite followed the motion without raising her chin too high. She saw two attendants enter first, solemn and careful. Behind them came a chair, not an ordinary chair. A wheeled chair, polished wood and carved arms as finely made as any throne. The man seated in it wore velvet and lace like the rest, but his posture was still, contained. His legs lay covered with a drape that matched his coat. His hands rested on the arms of the chair as though he feared they might drift away. Count Henri Auguste de Beaumont-Bourgogne. Marguerite had heard the name in the servants' corridors, not with affection. "The crippled count," someone had whispered, thinking no one from the kitchens could hear. "A tragedy," another had sighed, as if tragedy were a fashionable accessory. "His estates are vast," a third had added, voice sharp with interest. Marguerite did not like any of those voices. They all sounded the same, entertained. The count's face was pale under the candlelight, but not weak. His jaw was set with a quiet stubbornness. His hair was tied back neatly. He wore a ribbon at his throat with the precision of a man who still cared how he was seen, even if the world insisted on seeing him incorrectly. As he moved into the room, the crowd did not part for him the way it did for a duke or a prince. It parted slowly with reluctance, like water that did not wish to make space for a stone. "Ah," a lady murmured behind her fan, not loud enough to be called rude. "They have brought him." "Why tonight?" another answered. "How grim." "His mother insists," came a third voice. "She believes society will soften his disposition." "Society will not soften," the second lady replied. "Society will only observe." Marguerite's fingers tightened around her tray. Her knuckles whitened. She wished absurdly to step between the count and those words as if her body could block sound. But she was only a waitress, a girl from Burgundy. The chair rolled forward. The attendant steered with careful hands. The Count looked straight ahead. He did not search for pity. He did not beg for welcome. Yet Marguerite saw a flicker in his eyes when laughter rose from a nearby circle. Not because the laughter was about him, but because it could become about him at any moment. A man in a powdered wig leaned toward his companion. "If he smiles, perhaps we shall all applaud. It would be such a triumph." His companion gave a soft chuckle. "And if he does not, then we may lament his ingratitude." Marguerite's stomach turned. She offered a glass to a passing gentleman without meeting his gaze. He took it as if she were a tray stand. The Count's chair stopped near a column, slightly aside from the center. Not hidden, but not invited into the bright heart of the gathering either. It was a placement that could be defended as practical. "There," an attendant whispered, as if speaking to a child. "You will have a fine view, my lord." Henri Auguste said nothing. One of the attendants adjusted the drape over his knees a little too eagerly, smoothing it as if it were the important part of him. The Count's fingers curled for a moment, then relaxed. A lady approached with the graceful certainty of someone who had never been refused. She wore pearls and a small, sympathetic smile. "My dear Count," she said, voice sweet, "how brave you are to show yourself. It must be difficult." Marguerite saw his throat move. He swallowed. "Madame," he replied, and his voice was steady but thin. "Your kindness is noted." "Oh," the lady sighed. "Do not call it kindness. It is only natural. We are all so devoted to you." Her eyes flicked briefly to the chair, then away. "My husband says you were quite dazzling once," she continued as if discussing the weather. "At hunts, at dances. It is cruel how quickly life changes, is it not?" "Life changes," Henri Auguste said. The lady patted his arm lightly as if he were a child. "Still, you must not despair. There are many ways to be of use, many roles. Perhaps you might advise young men, since you can no longer—" Her words drifted off, not because she had mercy, but because she noticed someone more entertaining across the room. Henri Auguste's gaze remained fixed ahead. He did not flinch, but Marguerite saw the slight tightening at the corner of his mouth, like someone holding a door shut against a storm. Behind Marguerite, Madame Sabine hissed, "Do not stare." "I am not staring," Marguerite whispered back, though she had been. Sabine leaned closer. "Serve. Move. Keep your face empty." Marguerite moved, but her face refused to go empty. She passed a cluster of gentlemen who spoke with practiced carelessness. "Beaumont-Bourgogne was always proud," one said. "Pride is easier when one can stand," another answered. "Hush," a third murmured. "His cousin is here. Rouvre." Marguerite glanced sideways and saw a tall man with a confident smile and the posture of someone who belonged wherever he stood. He wore his elegance like a weapon, though no steel was visible. His eyes slid over the room and paused on the Count. The smile did not fade. It sharpened. Marquis Adrien de Rouvre stepped closer to Henri Auguste's chair with the ease of family and the chill of rivalry. "My dear cousin," he said warmly. Too warmly. "How very good to see you." Henri Auguste turned his head. "Marquis." Rouvre inclined his head. "You honor the evening, truly. Many were curious whether you would come." "Curious," Henri Auguste repeated. "Oh yes," Rouvre said, and his eyes gleamed. "Curiosity is the lifeblood of society. Do not take offense. Consider it affection." Henri Auguste did not answer. Rouvre lowered his voice, but not enough. "If you tire, you need only say the word. I can arrange your departure. No one would think less of you." Henri Auguste's hand tightened on the armrest. "I did not ask for departure." "Of course not," Rouvre replied, smiling wider. "You never ask. That has always been your way." He patted the chair's carved edge as if it were a dog. Then he stepped away, humming softly to himself. Marguerite felt her throat burn. She served 2 more glasses with hands that wanted to shake. The room spun with polite cruelty. A young woman with bright eyes leaned toward her companion. "Do you think he hears us?" "Even if he does," the companion answered, "what is he to do? Chase us?" They both laughed, light as feathers, heavy as stones. Marguerite kept her head down, but her thoughts rose up like a rebellion. She imagined herself dropping the tray. She imagined every glass shattering, not to harm, but to force silence. Yet the fantasy faded quickly, replaced by fear. A servant could be dismissed for less than a misstep. She had nowhere to fall but back into poverty. She told herself again, that she was not part of their world. Then the music shifted into a courtly dance, and the guests arranged themselves in bright pairs. The center of the room became a moving pattern of hands and bows, skirts sweeping, shoes gliding. The Count remained near the column, a still point beside the dance. A pair of nobles drifted close enough to him to be seen doing it. One of them, a man with a pink flush of wine in his cheeks, nodded at Henri Auguste with exaggerated solemnity. "My lord," he said, "what a delight! You are precisely where you should be. A perfect place to observe without exertion." Henri Auguste's eyes lifted. "I did not ask for your counsel." The man smiled wider, pretending not to hear the sting. No, I offer it freely. We must all do our part. You, by staying comfortably out of the way. We, by keeping the evening lively." His companion laughed softly. "Do not be cruel, Armand. The Count cannot help it." "I am not cruel," Armand protested. "I am considerate. Look, I have even ensured no one trips over him." Henri Auguste's face went very still. Marguerite stopped behind them with her tray, forgotten. Her breath caught in her chest. Sabine's voice rose sharply from somewhere behind. "Marguerite, move!" Marguerite moved, but she could not unhear it. She drifted toward the refreshments, and there she saw the Vicomtesse Héloïse de Charny. The Vicomtesse did not look like a villain. She looked like a painting, every curl arranged, every smile measured. The kind of woman who could ruin you by praising you in the wrong way. Marguerite offered her a glass. Héloïse accepted without looking at the servant's face. Her eyes were fixed on the dance and beyond it, on the Count. She spoke to the lady beside her, voice low, sharp, and amused. "His mother insists on dragging him into view," Héloïse said, "as if visibility is the same as dignity." The lady's fan fluttered. "Poor thing." "Poor us," Héloïse corrected gently. "We are meant to enjoy an evening, not perform compassion." Marguerite's fingers tightened on the tray again. She wanted to step away. She forced herself to remain still. Héloïse tilted her head. "Shall we make it easier for everyone?" "How?" the lady asked, intrigued. "With a toast," Héloïse replied. "Nothing unkind, only a reminder of what this court values." Marguerite felt a chill. She did not know what a toast could do. She learned quickly. Later, when the dance ended and guests gathered in clusters, Héloïse raised her glass with graceful authority. Conversation quieted, not because everyone respected her, but because everyone loved what she would do next. "My friends," Héloïse said, voice smooth as silk, "we are fortunate. The King's court shines because it is filled with those who serve France in ways both grand and subtle." A murmur of agreement rose. "We celebrate wit," Héloïse continued. "We celebrate charm. We celebrate loyalty. And above all, we celebrate those who remain useful." The word landed like a coin on marble. Marguerite's stomach clenched. She looked helplessly toward the Count. Henri Auguste sat very straight, his face calm. He watched Héloïse without blinking. Héloïse smiled as if she were offering a compliment to everyone at once. "To the men who stand firm in their duties, to those who carry burdens with strength, to those who lift the court by their presence." Glasses lifted. Eyes flicked toward Henri Auguste and away again, like a game. Héloïse held her glass aloft and allowed a pause, perfectly timed. Not long enough to be called cruel, long enough to make the silence speak. Marguerite's hand trembled. A drop of champagne slid down a glass stem. She wiped it quickly with a cloth, furious at herself for caring about spills while a man's dignity was being poured out. The crowd drank. A few laughed softly afterward, as if relieved to have been given permission. Henri Auguste did not move. He did not reach for a drink. He remained still, like someone who had learned that any reaction would be used as proof of weakness. Marguerite thought for a moment of her father back in Burgundy, how he stood straight even when he had nothing in his pockets, how her mother's pride had lived in small gestures, a clean apron, a head held level. Dignity did not belong only to palaces. Something in Marguerite rebelled, not loudly, quietly, stubbornly, like a seed refusing to die in bad soil. She heard Madame Sabine's warning in her head. Eyes down, mouth closed. She heard Héloïse's word too. Useful. Marguerite stepped forward before she could talk herself out of it. She moved through the crowd with her tray held steady, as if she had every right to pass. A few people turned their heads, annoyed at the interruption. Servants were supposed to slip around the edges, not cut through the center. Marguerite stopped in front of Henri Auguste. Her heart hammered so loudly she thought others might hear it. She lowered her tray slightly and dipped her head, not to the room, but to him. "My lord," she said, voice clear enough to carry. Henri Auguste's gaze snapped to her. Surprise, then caution. His eyes were a grey blue that did not soften easily. "You should not be here," he said quietly. Marguerite swallowed. "I am here to serve." His jaw tightened. "Then serve elsewhere. They will blame you for standing too close." "They already blame me for breathing," she replied before fear could stop her. A flicker passed through his eyes. Not amusement. Not yet. Something like recognition. Marguerite took a breath. The rules were rigid, but she had learned them well enough to twist them. Etiquette could be a cage or a key, depending on who held it. She shifted her tray to one hand. With the other, she lifted her forearm slightly, offering it to him the way a lady might offer her arm to an honored guest, careful not to presume too much. "My lord," she said, and her voice steadied, "will you permit me the honor of escorting you to a better view of the floor?" Henri Auguste stared at her forearm as if it were a strange object. "You do not know what you are doing," he murmured. "I know exactly what I am doing," Marguerite whispered back, and then, louder, "It is crowded here. The column blocks your sight. It would be unkind to leave you so placed." A few nearby guests turned. A ladies' fan stilled mid-flutter. Henri Auguste's attendants glanced at one another, uncertain whether to interfere. Servants did not speak like this, not in public. Henri Auguste's mouth opened, then closed. His pride warred with the trap he sensed. Marguerite's hand did not shake now. She held her arm steady, offering him a choice instead of pity. He spoke softly, meant only for her. "If I accept, they will punish you." Marguerite kept her eyes on his face. "If you refuse, they will continue." His nostrils flared slightly. He looked past her, at the room, at Eloise, who watched with mild curiosity, at Rouvre, who smiled as if enjoying a play. Henri Auguste exhaled. "Very well," he said. Marguerite's breath caught. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply guided his hand gently to rest over her forearm, just above the wrist, as etiquette demanded. It was a small touch, entirely proper in form, yet it burned with meaning because it said, "Man, not object. Count, not burden." Henri Auguste's fingers tensed on her sleeve, not gripping, holding, as if to anchor himself. Marguerite signaled to the attendants with a look. "If you please," she said, polite as any court lady. "Forward a little." The attendants hesitated. Henri Auguste lifted his chin. "Do as she says." The words were quiet, but they carried. A few heads turned sharply. Henri Auguste had spoken like a man accustomed to being obeyed. The chair rolled forward, away from the column toward the brighter center where people stood. Not into the dancer's path, but near enough that he could be seen without being tucked away. Marguerite walked beside him, her tray forgotten now, her free hand steady at her waist. She did not look at the nobles. She looked at the path. She made space with her presence the way she had been trained to make space with her silence. Whispers rose like insects. "Who is that girl? Is she mad? A servant touching a count? How improper! How clever!" Someone else murmured, tone unreadable. Eloise's smile deepened, not with warmth, with interest. Rouvre lifted his glass again, as if toasting privately to the spectacle. Henri Auguste's face remained controlled, but Marguerite felt the shift in him, the way his shoulders settled, the way his gaze lifted higher, the way, for a heartbeat, he looked less like a man being displayed and more like a man present by right. They stopped near an opening in the crowd where the dance could be seen clearly. Marguerite lowered her arm slightly, careful, waiting for him to release her. His fingers lingered a moment longer than necessary, then withdrew. He looked at her, and his voice dropped. "Why?" Marguerite's throat tightened. She could not tell him everything. She could not tell him that the toast had made her want to cry and shout at once. She could not tell him that his silence had looked like a man drowning politely. So she chose the simplest truth. "Because no one should be made into a lesson," she said. His eyes searched her face as if he had forgotten what honest words looked like. Around them, the court regained its breath. People began speaking again, louder, as if to smother what had happened. a gentleman murmured. If servants begin offering alms, what will they offer next? Opinions. A lady replied, perhaps we should applaud. It is so theatrical. Marguerite felt the weight of every gaze, yet she kept her posture straight. Her legs wanted to tremble. She forced them still. Madame Sabine appeared at the edge of the crowd, her face pale with anger and fear. Marguerite, she hissed, not daring to shout. Come here now. Marguerite did not move at once. She looked at Henri Auguste, as if asking permission without words. Henri Auguste's jaw flexed. Go, he said quietly, before they decide for you. Marguerite nodded once. She turned, meaning to obey, meaning to retreat into the servants' corridors and whatever punishment waited. She took 2 steps. A gloved hand caught her wrist, not hard, not violent, possessive in the way only power could be. Marguerite turned and saw the Vicomtesse Eloise de Charny standing close, her expression pleasant. My dear, Eloise said as if they were old friends, you have made a rather remarkable error. Marguerite tried to pull her wrist free gently. Madame, I meant no offense. Oh, I believe you did, Eloise replied, smiling. You meant it beautifully. Henri Auguste's voice cut in, low and controlled. Release her. Eloise kept her smile. My lord, I am only speaking to your servant. She is not my servant, Henri Auguste said. The words hung in the air. They were simple, but they drew a line. Rouvre drifted closer, curiosity bright on his face. Cousin, he said softly, do be careful. Your tone suggests you still think you command a room. Henri Auguste's eyes flashed. I command myself. And yet, Rouvre replied, you allow a kitchen girl to perform heroics at your side. How touching. Marguerite's cheeks heated, not with shame for herself, but with rage at being used as a label. I am not from the kitchens, she said, voice sharper than she intended. And I did not perform. I served. Rouvre blinked, amused. Listen to her. Versailles truly is full of surprises. Eloise's fingers tightened slightly on Marguerite's wrist. You see, this is precisely why rules exist. When we forget them, we invite confusion. Henri Auguste's hand rose, hovering near the arm of his chair as if he wished he could stand between them. His restraint was visible. His pride was visible. His helplessness, too, though he would rather have swallowed glass than show it. Marguerite saw it all at once. The Count trapped by etiquette and body, the Vicomtesse protected by manners, the Marquis delighted by chaos, and herself caught like a loose thread everyone wanted to tug. A tall attendant approached, wearing the insignia of palace authority. His steps were measured. His face was blank with duty. Vicomtesse, he said respectfully, then looked at Marguerite. You will come with me. Madame Sabine made a sound under her breath, half prayer, half curse. Henri Auguste's voice rose, stronger now. She will not. The attendant hesitated, eyes flicking to Eloise. Eloise did not release Marguerite. She only lifted her chin slightly, as if giving silent permission. Then another voice rang out from behind the nearest circle of nobles, calm and unmistakably pleased. Remove the girl, it said, and let this little disturbance be corrected at once. Remove the girl, it said, and let this little disturbance be corrected at once. Marguerite's breath caught. She recognized the voice before she saw the speaker. Madame Sabine had mentioned him in the corridors with a quiet dread. Monsieur de Saint-Clair, one of the court's appointed overseers for household order. Not a minister, not a noble of great rank, yet he carried the sort of authority that made servants vanish and scandals fold themselves neatly away. Saint-Clair stepped into view, his expression mild, almost bored. Vicomtesse, he said, bowing with measured respect. Marquis. Saint-Clair, Eloise answered, still holding Marguerite's wrist as if she were guiding a child across a street. I trust you will restore sense. Henri Auguste's voice sharpened. Release her. Saint-Clair looked at the Count with the calm of a man who had learned how to be untouchable. My lord, no one is harming her. Marguerite tried to pull free. Eloise's grip did not tighten painfully, but it did not yield. I will go, Marguerite said quickly, because she could feel the room leaning toward cruelty. If you require it, monsieur, but I have done nothing dishonest. Eloise smiled. Dishonesty is not the only offense, my dear. Henri Auguste's fingers curled on the armrest. If you wish to speak of offense, speak to me. Oh, we are, Rouvre said pleasantly. In our way, we are speaking to you through her. It is very efficient. Henri Auguste's eyes flashed. You will not use her to amuse yourselves. Sinclair lifted his hand not toward Henri, but toward the attendant who had first approached. Take the young woman to the antechamber by the service corridor, Sinclair said, and send for Madame Sabine. We will have clarity, and then the evening may continue. Madame Sabine stepped forward, lips tight. I am here, monsieur. Excellent, Sinclair replied. Marguerite felt a sudden, small relief. Sabine's anger was frightening, but it was familiar. She could endure familiar things. Eloise released Marguerite at last, as if bored of holding her. Marguerite bowed. Madame. Eloise's eyes swept over her. You did not even ask my pardon. I did not offend you, Marguerite said, and the words came out before she could soften them. A hush. A quick intake of breath from someone nearby. Rouvre chuckled. Oh, cousin, you have adopted a lion cub. Henri Auguste's voice turned very low. Do not provoke her. Eloise's smile did not fade. It became more delicate, more dangerous. My dear, she said to Marguerite, I will not argue with you in the open. It is beneath both our stations. Marguerite stared at her. Both? Eloise's eyes gleamed. Yes. Mine because I will not wrestle with a servant. Yours because you should not imagine you are equal to a vicomtesse. Madame Sabine hissed, Marguerite. Marguerite lowered her gaze, not in surrender, but to keep her face from revealing too much. Sinclair clapped his hands softly once. Enough. This is not a tragedy. It is housekeeping. The attendants stepped close. Marguerite felt their presence at her elbows, guiding, not grabbing. She moved because resistance would become a story, and stories were what killed servants here. As she was led away, she glanced back once. Henri Auguste watched her, jaw set. His eyes met hers. In his gaze there was a command he could not enforce, and a promise he did not know how to make. Rouvres leaned down toward Henri Auguste as if offering friendly counsel. I advise you to be sensible. The court has no patience for scenes. Henri Auguste did not look away from Marguerite. Then perhaps the court should learn patience. Sinclair smiled faintly, as if hearing a child boast. My lord, we will speak soon. The corridor outside the salon felt colder, only because the laughter was muffled. The palace did not change, but the air did. Here, everyone moved with haste and purpose. No one danced, no one pretended. Madame Sabine walked beside Marguerite, her steps sharp. You could have ruined us, Sabine whispered. Marguerite swallowed. I did not mean to ruin anyone. You ruined yourself, Sabine shot back, and that is a luxury we cannot afford. I did not think, Marguerite admitted. Sabine gave a humorless laugh. You thought too much, you felt too much. Those are the same mistake here. They reached an antechamber where servants waited in tense silence when nobles passed. A small table stood near the wall with a ledger and a pen. Not a court, not a chamber of justice, just a place where decisions were recorded as if they were inventories. Sinclair entered a moment later, alone, smoothing his cuffs. The door closed behind him with a soft finality. He looked at Marguerite as if studying a stain. Name, he said. Marguerite Lefebvre, she answered. Employment? Service, Marguerite said carefully. I carry trays in the salon. From where? Burgundy. Sinclair nodded, as if that explained everything. And who instructed you to approach the Count de Beaumont-Bourgogne as you did? No one, Marguerite replied. Sabine made a tight sound in her throat. Sinclair lifted a brow. No one. Marguerite held his gaze. No one, monsieur. He turned slightly toward Sabine. You are responsible for her conduct? Yes, monsieur. Then you should speak. Did you encourage this? No, Sabine said quickly. I warned her against every foolishness. She is new. She acted without instruction. Sinclair looked back at Marguerite. Why? Marguerite's mouth went dry. The answer sounded too large for this small room. Because, she said slowly, the Count was placed like a decoration, not like a man. Sinclair's eyes hardened, though his voice remained gentle. We do not speak of nobles as men in that tone. We speak of them as lords, as titles, as functions. Marguerite's hands curled at her sides. Then perhaps that is the problem, monsieur. Sabine flinched as if Marguerite had struck the air. Sinclair's gaze sharpened. Do you wish to be dismissed tonight? Marguerite breathed in. If dismissal is the only price of refusing cruelty, then yes, Sabine whispered. Marguerite, stop. Sinclair leaned forward slightly. Do you know what dismissal means here? It means I return to my village, Marguerite said, voice steady though her stomach twisted. And I find work that does not require me to swallow my own conscience. Sinclair stared as if she had presented a foreign coin. You speak like someone who imagines she has options, he said. I have hunger, Marguerite replied. That is an option I do not enjoy. A pause. Sinclair's mouth twitched, not with amusement, but with something like irritation at being forced to listen. You have done more than misplace yourself, he said. You have disrupted a royal gathering. I did not shout, Marguerite said. I did not insult anyone. I offered my arm. You offered yourself, Sinclair corrected. You placed your body in the center of attention. That is not your right. Marguerite's voice softened, only because she refused to plead. I did not ask for attention. I asked for decency. Sinclair's smile returned, small and cold. Decency is decided by those who own it. Madame Sabine took a careful step forward. Monsieur, if I may, the girl can be corrected. She can be removed from salon duty. Put her back to the scullery. Let her learn humility. There is no need for lasting consequences. Sinclair tilted his head. You are fond of her. Sabine's jaw tightened. I am responsible. That is not the same, Sinclair said. Sabine held his gaze. No, monsieur, it is the only way I can be anything here. Sinclair let the words hang. Then he turned back to Marguerite. You will apologize, he said. You will state that you were carried away by youthful emotion. You will say you regret the presumption. You will say you meant no reflection upon the court's order. Marguerite listened, feeling her heart hammer. And if I do not? She asked quietly. Sinclair's voice remained smooth. Then you will be dismissed with a note. You will be barred from service houses. You will find doors closed where you did not know there were doors. Marguerite imagined returning home not only poor, but marked. A girl who had failed in Versailles. A cautionary tale. Sabine's eyes begged her without words. Marguerite swallowed. If I apologize, will the Count be treated better? Sinclair blinked once. This is not about the Count. Marguerite's gaze sharpened. It is. Sinclair's smile thinned. It is about order. Order that requires humiliation is not order, Marguerite said, then immediately wished she could pull the words back and hide them under her tongue. Sabine's shoulders sagged. Sinclair exhaled softly as if tired. Very well. We will do this another way. He stepped to the door and opened it slightly. Send for the Count de Beaumont-Bourgogne, he said to someone outside, and the Marquis de Rouvre, and the Vicomtesse de Charny if she pleases. The door closed again. Sabine hissed, You have invited wolves into the room. Marguerite stared at her. Wolves bite. They do not smile first. Sabine's eyes flashed. That smile is the bite. Marguerite's throat tightened. I cannot pretend it was wrong to treat him like a man. Sabine's voice dropped to a whisper. You can pretend anything if it keeps you alive. Marguerite turned her head away. I do not want that kind of life. Sabine's face softened for the first time, only for a heartbeat. None of us wanted it. Then we needed it. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Henri Auguste entered, pushed by an attendant who stayed behind him like a shadow. His gaze went immediately to Marguerite, then to Sinclair. Rouvres followed, calm and curious. Eloise arrived last, as if on purpose, as if she enjoyed making rooms wait for her. Eloise inclined her head toward Henri Auguste. My lord. Henri Auguste did not return the courtesy. Vicomtesse, Rouvres smiled. What a charming little gathering. I do hope we are not taking too much attention from the ball. Sinclair gestured politely to the small table. We are simply seeking clarity. Henri Auguste's eyes narrowed. About what? Sinclair folded his hands. About this young woman's conduct and the consequence it requires. Henri Auguste's voice was controlled. I require no consequence. Eloise laughed softly. My lord, you do not require consequence. Society does. Henri Auguste's jaw tightened. Society is a convenient name for cruelty. Rouvres sighed. You are always so severe. Cousin, do not make this larger than it is. A servant forgot herself. She must be reminded. Marguerite lifted her chin. I did not forget myself, monsieur. I remembered someone else. Rouvre looked delighted. Listen to her again. She speaks as if she were in a play. Eloise's gaze flicked to St. Clair. You see what I mean. She is not merely foolish, she is emboldened. Henri Auguste's eyes flashed. She is brave. Eloise's smile sharpened. Bravery belongs in men with swords, not in girls with trays. There are no swords in this room, Henri Auguste said. Only tongues. St. Clair lifted a hand as if smoothing the air. Let us proceed with moderation. He turned toward Marguerite. You will apologize. Marguerite looked at Henri Auguste. She saw the tension in him, the way his shoulders held themselves, as if he were bracing against invisible pressure. He spoke softly to her, not commanding, not pleading. If you apologize, they will stop. Marguerite's throat tightened. Will they? Henri Auguste did not answer at once. Rouvre leaned forward slightly, feigning sympathy. Marguerite, is it? Be sensible. Apologize, and this will be over. You may even keep your post. Perhaps you will be grateful later. Marguerite looked at him. You speak as if gratitude is the goal. It is, Rouvre replied smoothly. Gratitude makes people manageable. Henri Auguste's eyes cut toward Rouvre. Enough. Eloise crossed her hands lightly. My lord, you are making this about yourself. It is not flattering. It is about her, Henri Auguste said. Eloise's gaze flicked to Marguerite. Then let us be merciful. Let her apologize, and I will accept it. I will even speak kindly of her to those who matter. Marguerite's stomach tightened. Speak kindly? Eloise's tone turned gently instructive. Yes, I will say you are young, that you acted out of misguided compassion, that you meant no insult to rank. Such words can save a servant. Marguerite's voice came out quiet. And if I say those things, I must also say I was wrong to treat him with dignity. No, Eloise replied, smiling. You must say you were wrong to do it publicly. Marguerite's chest tightened. So the dignity may exist only when hidden. Rouvre tapped his glove lightly against his palm. Now we are drifting again into philosophy. It tires me. Henri Auguste spoke, each word precise. You will not force her to diminish herself to protect your comfort. St. Clair's mild expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. My lord, you are in an awkward position. Henri Auguste's gaze snapped to him. Explain. St. Clair nodded toward Marguerite. If you insist on protecting her, you will make her situation worse. Marguerite turned sharply. How? St. Clair's smile returned. Because if a great lord defies the household order for a servant, people will assume there is a reason beyond principle. Eloise's eyes gleamed. Exactly. The girl will be called ambitious, improper, hunting a title. Marguerite's cheeks burned. I did not. Rouvre lifted his hand. No need to protest. The court loves a story. And when the court loves a story, it will have one. Henri Auguste's voice dropped dangerously calm. Then I will give them a story they do not enjoy. St. Clair lifted his brows. My lord, are you threatening the court? Henri Auguste held his gaze. I am reminding you that I still have a name. Rouvre chuckled. A name does not roll a chair through a ballroom, cousin. Henri Auguste's face went very still. For a moment Marguerite feared he would withdraw into silence again, the way he had at the column. Instead, he spoke with cold clarity. You think my body is my only weakness. Eloise leaned closer, amused. Is it not? Henri Auguste did not answer her. He looked at St. Clair. If you wish for an apology, you will not demand it like a confession. You will ask for it like a request. St. Clair's expression remained polite. Very well, I request it. Henri Auguste looked at Marguerite again. His voice softened. If you refuse, they will punish you, and I may not be able to stop them. Marguerite's mouth went dry. The truth sat between them like a stone. She whispered, Then what can you do? Henri Auguste's eyes darkened. I can speak. I can insist on procedure. I can refuse their easy cruelty. Rouvre sighed. Procedure. Always procedure. Cousin, you cling to it like a drowning man clings to driftwood. Henri Auguste replied, Then stop pushing me into the water. Eloise's smile remained fixed. Enough. This is tiresome. She turned her gaze to Marguerite, and her voice softened into something almost maternal. Girl, you are not being asked to lie. You are being asked to understand your place. Say you were wrong to presume. Say you regret drawing attention. It is nothing. It is a few words. Marguerite met her eyes. A few words can become a chain. Eloise's smile flickered. Chains are for criminals. Marguerite replied, Then why do you speak like a jailer? Sabine made a strangled sound. Sinclair's tone sharpened. That is enough. Marguerite felt her heart hammering, but she did not look away. I will not apologize for treating him as a man. I will apologize if I was clumsy, if I interrupted, if I made disorder. But I will not say the act itself was wrong. Eloise's gaze turned icy. Stubborn. Rouvres smiled. Foolish. Henri Auguste stared at Marguerite, and something shifted in his face, subtle and raw. Not pity, not gratitude. Something like being seen. Sinclair's voice returned to mild. Then you leave me no choice. He turned to Sabine. You will dismiss her from salon duty immediately. Sabine swallowed. Yes, monsieur. And, Sinclair continued, because this incident occurred in the presence of high society, I must ensure it was not encouraged by other misconduct. Marguerite frowned. What misconduct? Sinclair opened his hands as if apologizing. We have had a small irregularity. A piece of silverwork from the service table has gone missing. Sabine stiffened. Missing? Eloise's eyes brightened with interest. How unfortunate. Rouvres lifted his brows. Are you suggesting theft? Here at Versailles? How shocking. Henri Auguste's voice hardened. Do not pretend surprise. Sinclair looked at Marguerite. You were near the service passage. You were observed leaving your tray unattended when you approached the Count. Marguerite's stomach dropped. I did set the tray down. For a moment, in the corridor by the salon. And you returned without it, Sinclair said. I returned with it, Marguerite protested. Madame Sabine took it from me when she called my name. Sabine nodded quickly. Yes, I did. Sinclair's mild smile did not change. Nonetheless, the item is missing. Marguerite felt heat rise to her face, not with guilt but with incredulous anger. I did not take anything. Eloise gave a small, sympathetic sigh, as if Marguerite were a child caught with jam on her fingers. They never do, my dear. Henri Auguste's voice snapped. This is absurd. Sinclair's gaze flicked to him. My lord, theft is not a matter of opinion, Rouvres murmured. Perhaps she wished to keep a souvenir of her brave little moment. Marguerite stared at him. You are enjoying this. Rouvres did not deny it. It is an interesting turn. Sabine stepped forward. Monsieur, I have known many girls. Thieves are not usually the ones who speak like she speaks. Sinclair replied, Thieves speak in whatever way serves them. Marguerite's hands shook now. She forced them still. Search me then. A silence fell. It was not scandalized by the search. It was scandalized by her offering. Eloise's smile widened, pleased by Marguerite's lack of polish. How vulgar. Henri Auguste's face tightened. No one will lay hands on her. Sinclair's tone remained smooth. Then we will proceed differently. The item may be found without... The door opened. A junior footman entered, breathless, holding a small object wrapped in cloth as if it were precious. Monsieur de Sinclair, the footman said, bowing. It was found. Sinclair's brows lifted, faintly satisfied. Where? In the service passage, the footman replied quickly. Near the drapes by the side table. Marguerite's throat closed. Near the drapes, she repeated. But that is exactly where... Sabine's eyes widened. No. Sinclair extended his hand. The footman placed the wrapped object into his palm. Sinclair unwrapped it slowly, as if savoring the silence. The silver gleamed under the candlelight, a small ornamental piece, the sort used as part of a serving set. Elegant, easily pocketed, easily planted. Eloise leaned in. Well, well, Rouvres smiled. How convenient. Marguerite's voice came out thin. That is not mine. Sinclair turned it in his hand. We shall see. He angled it toward the light. On one side, a tiny engraved mark. A crest. Henri Auguste's gaze fixed on it with sudden intensity. Give me that. Sinclair hesitated. Henri Auguste's voice turned iron. Now! Sinclair placed the silver piece in Henri Auguste's hand as if humoring him. Henri Auguste studied the engraving. His fingers trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from controlled fury. Marguerite watched his face change, saw the stillness tighten into something sharper. "What is it?" she whispered. Henri Auguste did not look up. "This crest," he said, voice low, "belongs to my household." Rouvre lifted his brows. "Of course it does. You have silver, cousin. All great houses do." Henri Auguste's eyes stayed on the mark. "Not like this." Eloise's fan fluttered. "Meaning?" Henri Auguste's thumb traced the engraving. "There is a line wrong, a curve altered, a mistake someone made when copying it." Sinclair's mild expression wavered just slightly. "My lord, you are seeing what you wish." Henri Auguste lifted the piece higher, angling it so the light caught the mark clearly. "I have seen my crest on letters, seals, gates, and silver since I was a boy. This is not mine." Marguerite's breath caught. "Then someone forged it." Henri Auguste's gaze finally lifted to her. In his eyes was something hard and awake. "Yes," he said quietly. "And they chose to place the forgery near you." Rouvre chuckled, but the sound was thinner now. "How dramatic!" Henri Auguste's voice did not rise. It did not need to. "Someone is using her as bait." Sinclair's smile returned, forced. "My lord, you are distressed. This is a simple matter of a servant's misconduct." Henri Auguste stared at him. "No. This is a matter of someone with access to my household attempting to stain my name through hers." Eloise's eyes narrowed. "You think you are the target." Henri Auguste's jaw tightened. "I know I am." Marguerite looked from face to face. The room felt smaller, as if walls had moved inward. Her fear shifted into something clearer, colder. She whispered, "If they can alter a crest, they can alter any story." Henri Auguste's fingers closed around the silver piece. "Yes," he said, voice tight. "And they have begun with you. And they have begun with you." Sinclair let a small pause bloom, as if silence were his favorite tool. "My lord," he said at last, "forgery is a serious word." "It is a serious mark," Henri Auguste replied. Eloise's fan moved once, slow and deliberate. "Perhaps you are mistaken." Henri Auguste did not look at her. "Perhaps you are hoping I am." Rouvre sighed. "Cousin, you are making this sound like a conspiracy. The girl acted improperly. A trinket went missing. It was found. Why must everything be turned into drama?" Marguerite's voice came out steady despite the pounding in her chest. "Because it was not missing. It was placed." Sinclair's gaze slid to her. "A bold accusation from a servant." "I am not accusing without thought," Marguerite said. "I am saying what happened." Sabine stepped forward, hands clasped tightly. "Monsieur, if you will allow, this is not the behavior of a thief. If she wanted silver, she would not choose this night to draw eyes to herself." Eloise smiled. "Or perhaps she is clever enough to create confusion." "Clever enough," Marguerite echoed, "to risk starvation for a piece of metal." Rouvre lifted a brow. "You speak as if starvation is a novelty." Henri Auguste's gaze snapped to him. "You will not speak to her like that." Rouvre's smile widened. "And you will not speak to me like a king." Sinclair raised a hand, gentle as a lullaby. "We are not here to quarrel. We are here to restore order." Henri Auguste leaned forward slightly in his chair, the movement controlled, deliberate. "Then let us do it properly." Sinclair blinked. "Properly?" Henri Auguste held up the silver piece. "This mark is altered. If you insist on addressing a servant's alleged theft, you will also address why my crest appears on an object found at the exact point where she could be framed." Eloise's voice turned sweet. "My lord, you are truly devoted to your own discomfort." Henri Auguste answered without looking at her. "I am devoted to truth." Rouvre chuckled softly. "Truth is an expensive hobby." Henri Auguste's eyes cut to him. "So is treachery." A hush. Sabine's breath caught. Marguerite stared at Henri Auguste, startled by the edge in his voice. It was not loud, it was worse than loud, it was precise. Sinclair's mild expression stiffened. "My lord, you must be cautious with your insinuations." Henri Auguste replied, "I am being cautious. I have not named anyone." Eloise's fan stopped. "But you want us to feel named." Henri Auguste said, "If the shoe fits, madame, do not ask me to pretend it is a slipper." Rouvre gave an appreciative little nod, as if applauding a performance. "There you are, the Beaumont tongue. I missed it." Sinclair's voice cooled. "I will not allow this to become a spectacle." "It began as a spectacle," Henri Auguste said. "In the ballroom." Sinclair glanced at Marguerite. "You admit you interrupted a royal gathering?" Marguerite held his gaze. "I admit I moved a chair." Sinclair's mouth tightened. "You touched a nobleman." "I offered my arm," Marguerite replied, "as etiquette allows." Eloise let out a soft laugh. "Etiquette allows a lady to offer her arm. You are not a lady." Marguerite's cheeks burned, but she did not drop her eyes. "Then perhaps etiquette should be less concerned with my birth and more concerned with his dignity." Henri Auguste's fingers curled around the silver. He breathed out slowly. "Enough. This does not help her." Marguerite turned to him. "I do not want my words to hurt you." "They cannot," he said quietly. "Not like theirs do." The words landed between them, simple and heavy. Marguerite's throat tightened. She did not know what to answer, so she answered with action. "Let there be an inquiry," she said to Sinclair. "Not whispers." Sinclair studied her a moment. "Very well, you will have your inquiry." Sabine exhaled in relief. Sinclair continued, "But you will not have it on your terms. Until then, you will be removed from duty and kept where you can do no further harm." "Kept," Marguerite repeated, alarm rising. "Supervised," Sinclair corrected, as if changing the word changed the truth. Henri Auguste's voice sharpened. "You will not imprison her." Sinclair spread his hands. "My lord, no one is speaking of prisons. She will remain in the servants' quarters under Madame Sabine's responsibility." Sabine stiffened. "Monsieur, you will do it," Sinclair said gently, "for your own sake. If you refuse, you may join her in disgrace." Sabine swallowed, eyes flicking to Marguerite with a pain that looked like apology. Rouvre sighed. "There, how tidy." Eloise's smile returned, faintly satisfied. "And the Count may return to the ball without further disturbance." Henri Auguste did not move. "I will not," Eloise blinked. "You will not what?" "I will not sit in a ballroom and let them treat her as a criminal for offering decency," he said. Sinclair's voice remained mild. "My lord, your presence is expected." Henri Auguste's jaw tightened. "Let them expect less." Rouvre leaned closer, voice low and coaxing. "Cousin, do not be stubborn. If you defy them over a servant, you will lose what little patience remains for you." Henri Auguste looked at him with cold clarity. "And you will gain it." Rouvre's smile did not falter, but his eyes sharpened. "I gain nothing from your misery." "You gain space," Henri Auguste replied, "and perhaps you believe you gain my estates." Eloise's fan fluttered again, faster this time. "My lord, you are unwell. You should not speak of inheritance in such a tone." Henri Auguste answered, "In such a tone as truth." Sinclair stepped in, voice smooth. "We will proceed with the inquiry tomorrow. Tonight the court requires calm. Madame Sabine, take the girl." Sabine's hands trembled as she reached for Marguerite's elbow. "Come," she whispered. Marguerite looked at Henri Auguste. "My lord," he cut her off softly. "Do not call me that here." She blinked. "What should I call you?" His eyes held hers, brief and intense. "Henri." Sabine stiffened, as if she had heard a forbidden prayer. Marguerite's lips parted. The name felt too intimate for a palace corridor, too honest for a place built on masks. "Henri," she whispered, barely audible. His gaze did not soften, but something in it steadied. "I will not abandon you." Rouvre made an exaggerated little sigh. "How romantic!" Henri Auguste did not look at him. "How basic!" Eloise stepped closer to Marguerite, voice low and silky. "Do you see what you've done? You have made him ridiculous." Marguerite replied quietly. "He was not ridiculous until you insisted he should be." Eloise's smile tightened. "You will learn." Sabine pulled Marguerite gently away. "Do not answer her. Please." Marguerite let herself be led, but her eyes stayed on Henri Auguste until a turn in the corridor blocked the view. In the servants' passage, the palace seemed to breathe differently. Less perfume, more haste, more fear. Sabine hissed as soon as they were out of earshot. "Why did you say his name?" Marguerite swallowed. "He asked me." "He should not have," Sabine snapped. Then her voice cracked a fraction. And you should not have obeyed. Marguerite's hands clenched. You obey every day. Sabine stopped walking so abruptly that Marguerite nearly bumped into her. I obey because I have seen what happens to those who do not, Sabine whispered. I have seen girls put out with nothing but their shoes and a note that turns them into a warning. Marguerite's stomach twisted. I did not think they could do so much. Sabine's eyes were hard. They can do anything that does not stain their gloves. They reached a narrow room off the corridor. Not a cell, but not a home either. 2 pallets, a small table, a single candle. A space meant for storing people the way one stored linens. This is where you will stay, Sabine said, until morning. Marguerite looked around. And then? Sabine's mouth tightened. Then the inquiry. Marguerite sat slowly, trying to keep her breathing even. They will decide I stole. Sabine's laugh was sharp. If they want you to have stolen, you will have stolen. That is how it works. Marguerite stared at her. Then why did St. Clair agree to an inquiry at all? Sabine's eyes flicked toward the corridor. Because the Count demanded procedure, and procedure is the court's favorite costume. Marguerite lowered her voice. Henri believes someone is using me. Sabine's face tightened. He is probably right, and that makes you more dangerous to them than a thief ever could be. Marguerite swallowed. I do not want to be dangerous. Sabine's voice softened almost unwillingly. No one does. But you have been seen. A quiet knock came at the door. Sabine stiffened, then opened it a crack. A young footman stood there, eyes wide, nervous. Madame Sabine, what do you want? Sabine whispered. He glanced past her at Marguerite, then lowered his voice. They are speaking of the girl in the pantry corridor, the noble's attendants. They say the Vicomtesse wants her dismissed tonight. Quietly. Sabine's jaw set. St. Clair said morning. The footman swallowed. St. Clair says many things. Marguerite stood. Who are you? The footman blinked. Luke. Marguerite stepped closer. Luke, did you see who found the silver? Luke's eyes darted. No, mademoiselle. They sent me for cloth. When I returned, it was already in the footman's hands. Sabine hissed. Do not question him, he will be caught. Luke's voice trembled. I only came because... He looked at Marguerite, then away. Because what you did was not shameful. Marguerite's throat tightened. Thank you. Luke swallowed. The Count's attendant is angry. He said the Marquis smiled when St. Clair mentioned the missing silver. Sabine's eyes narrowed. Of course he did. Marguerite stepped closer to the door. Luke, can you deliver a message? Luke froze. A message? Sabine snapped. No. Marguerite's voice turned urgent. If they separate us before morning, the inquiry will be a farce. He must know what is being said. Sabine's hands clenched. They will separate you because you insist on playing with fire. Marguerite looked at her steadily. Then help me carry water. Sabine stared at her, breathing hard through her nose. You are impossible. Marguerite answered. I am frightened. Sabine's face shifted. For a moment the harshness cracked and something human showed through. Then she turned to Luke. If you do this, you risk your position. Luke swallowed. I already have little. I can risk little. Sabine exhaled sharply. Fine, but no names. Marguerite grabbed a scrap of paper from the table, hands shaking. She wrote quickly, pressing hard. Luke watched, tense. Marguerite handed the paper to Sabine. Read it. Sabine read, lips moving silently. Her eyes widened slightly. What does it say? Luke whispered. Sabine looked at Marguerite. It says the crest is altered, that it was placed, that St. Clair means to make it vanish quietly. Marguerite nodded. And that the Marquis is pleased. Sabine hesitated, then tore the paper into smaller pieces, her movements quick. You cannot hand him a note. Notes can be taken, burned, used against you. Marguerite stared. Then what? Sabine shoved one of the small pieces into Luke's hand. You will memorize this, then you will destroy it. Luke's eyes widened. Memorize? Sabine's voice was fierce. If you cannot memorize a few lines, you do not deserve your shoes. Luke swallowed, eyes scanning the paper rapidly. Marguerite said, Tell him the crest on the silver is wrong. Tell him someone copied it. Tell him I did not touch that object. Tell him St. Clair wants me dismissed tonight. Luke nodded, lips moving as he repeated it to himself. Sabine snatched the paper back and held it to the candle flame. It curled, blackened, vanished. "There," she whispered. "Now it cannot betray you." Luke looked at the ashes, then at Marguerite. "I will tell him." Marguerite caught his sleeve lightly. "Be careful." Luke nodded once, then slipped away. Sabine closed the door and leaned her forehead against it for a moment. "You are not a fool," Marguerite said softly. Sabine's laugh was bitter. "I am a survivor." Marguerite's voice was gentle. "Survivors sometimes become brave by accident." Sabine turned, eyes sharp. "Do not flatter me. I am not brave. I am tired." Marguerite sat again, forcing herself to breathe. Minutes passed like slow footsteps. Then another knock. Sabine opened the door with her usual sharpness, ready to scold. Instead, a priest stood there. Not grand, not adorned. Simple black coat, calm eyes. "Madame Sabine," he said quietly, "peace to this house." Sabine stiffened. "Father Anselm." Marguerite rose instinctively, startled. Priests did not visit servant rooms without reason. Father Anselm's gaze landed on Marguerite, kind but observant. "You are the young woman." Marguerite swallowed. "Yes, father." He nodded slightly. "The one who offered an arm." Sabine's voice was cautious. "Why are you here?" Father Anselm answered, "Because I hear souls are being weighed tonight without mercy." Sabine's lips pressed together. "Mercy is expensive at Versailles." Father Anselm's eyes softened. "And yet sometimes it appears even here." Marguerite felt her throat tighten. "Father, can you speak to the Count?" Sabine snapped, "No." Father Anselm looked at Sabine. "Why not?" Sabine's jaw clenched. "Because a priest's words can become a rumor, and rumors are knives." Father Anselm said gently, "Knives are not allowed in your rooms, Madame Sabine." Sabine glared. "Do not mock me, father." He shook his head. "I do not. I am warning you in the only way you will accept." Marguerite stepped forward. "Father, they say I stole. They placed a silver piece near the corridor. It bears the Count's crest, but altered." Father Anselm's gaze sharpened. "Altered?" Henri Auguste's voice echoed faintly in Marguerite's mind. "Someone forged it." Father Anselm frowned. "That is not the work of a hungry girl." "No," Marguerite said. Sabine's voice was tight. "Do not involve yourself, father. It will swallow you." Father Anselm replied quietly, "It has already swallowed many." Marguerite stared at him. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then said, "The Count's misfortunes have been arranged. Not all, perhaps, but some." Sabine stiffened. "Father." Marguerite's pulse quickened. "You know something." Father Anselm's eyes held hers. "I know that when a man becomes inconvenient, the court begins to call his suffering natural. It is easier that way." Marguerite whispered, "And the Marquis?" Father Anselm did not answer directly. "You should be cautious with names." Sabine nodded sharply. Finally, something sensible. Father Anselm looked toward the corridor, as if listening. "I can try to reach the Count. But you must understand, child, that he is surrounded." Marguerite's voice turned urgent. "Then help him see." Father Anselm's gaze softened. "You have already helped him see, whether you know it or not." Sabine's eyes narrowed. "Are you encouraging her?" Father Anselm answered, "I am acknowledging what is already done." He turned back to Marguerite. "If I speak to him, what should I tell him?" Marguerite swallowed. She thought of Luke, carrying the message through corridors. She thought of Henri's eyes when he told her he would not abandon her. "Tell him," she said quietly, "that I will not confess to a lie. Tell him I do not regret treating him with dignity. Tell him they will try to separate us." Sabine made a sound. "Us." Marguerite flushed but did not retreat. "Yes, us. Because this began with him and ends with me, unless he stops them." Father Anselm nodded slowly. "Very well." He reached into his pocket and took out a small rosary, worn smooth. He placed it in Marguerite's palm. "I do not give charms," he said softly. "I give reminders." Marguerite curled her fingers around it. "Reminders of what?" "That you are not alone," Father Anselm replied. Sabine's face tightened, as if she disliked kindness. Father Anselm stepped back toward the door. "I will do what I can." As he left, he paused and added very quietly, Be wary of a kindness that arrives too quickly. It is often a leash. Then he was gone. Marguerite stood still for a moment, rosary in hand, trying not to let fear swallow her. Sabine watched her. "Do you even understand what you've stepped into?" Marguerite answered honestly. "No." Sabine's voice dropped. "Then listen, the Marquise is family to him. Family can smile while it steals." Marguerite's throat tightened. "He has no family that can help him." Sabine's eyes flashed. "He has a name. That is his help. But names can be bent if you bend the man," Marguerite whispered. "And they have tried." Sabine nodded once, grim. For a long time, the candle burned lower. The palace's distant music floated like a memory of joy. Then footsteps rushed past the door, hasty, official. Sabine moved to the crack in the door and listened. Voices murmured outside, clipped and urgent. "Royal note. By morning." Sabine's face went pale. Marguerite's heart jumped. "What is it?" Sabine turned slowly. "It is what you feared." The door opened abruptly, without courtesy. Luke stumbled in, breathless, eyes wide with alarm. Behind him stood an attendant in fine livery, holding a sealed paper as if it were a sacred object. Luke blurted, "I tried to reach him, but they—" The attendant cut him off, voice coldly polite. "Count Henri-Auguste de Beaumont-Bourgogne is to receive this at once." Sabine stepped forward. "This is servants' quarters." The attendant replied, "The Count is nearby. He was brought to the private salon." Marguerite's breath caught. "Brought?" Luke whispered. "They moved him. They said it was for calm." Sabine's eyes narrowed. "For control." The attendant looked at Marguerite as if noticing her for the first time. "And the girl will come as well." Marguerite's stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because the order concerns her," the attendant said. Sabine snapped, "Read it, then." The attendant's mouth tightened. "It is not for you." Marguerite's hands clenched around the rosary. She looked at Luke. "Did you tell him?" Luke's eyes shone with frustration. "I tried. They blocked the corridor. Father Anselm went another way." Sabine muttered under her breath, a prayer that sounded more like anger than faith. The attendant gestured. "Now." They walked quickly through the corridors. Marguerite's steps felt too loud. Sabine kept close, as if her body could shield Marguerite from words. They entered a small private salon off the main hall. Henri-Auguste was there, seated in his chair, his face tight with restrained fury. Saint-Clair stood beside a table. Rouvre leaned near the fireplace, calm. Eloise sat as if she were enjoying a recital. Henri-Auguste's gaze locked on Marguerite immediately. "Are you well?" Marguerite nodded quickly. "Yes." Saint-Clair glanced at the attendant. "The note." The attendant handed the sealed paper to Saint-Clair with a bow. Henri-Auguste's voice sharpened. "That is for me." Saint-Clair smiled faintly. "It concerns the household order. I will read it." Henri-Auguste's fingers gripped the chair arm. "Read it, then." Saint-Clair broke the seal carefully. He unfolded the paper with a deliberation that made Marguerite's skin prickle. He read aloud, voice smooth and official. "By order of His Majesty's household authority," Saint-Clair said, "the Count de Beaumont-Bourgogne is to depart Versailles at first light for reasons of health and peace of the court. Travel arrangements will be made without delay." Henri-Auguste's face went very still. Rouvre sighed as if relieved. "How thoughtful." Eloise smiled. "How wise." Saint-Clair continued, turning the page slightly. "Furthermore, the servant Marguerite Lefebvre is to be removed from palace service immediately and held under supervision until her case is concluded, without opportunity for further contact with the Count." Henri-Auguste's voice dropped, raw and controlled. "They will separate us by morning." Henri-Auguste's voice dropped, raw and controlled. "They will separate us by morning." Saint-Clair folded the paper as if he were closing a ledger. "It is decided." Marguerite's mouth went dry. She looked at the seal, at the calm hands, at the polite faces. Polite was worse than loud. Polite meant they could do anything and still sleep. Rouvre exhaled, as if the room had finally grown sensible. "You see? Order always returns." Eloise smiled from her chair. "How merciful the household can be when it must." Henri-Auguste did not look at either of them. He stared at Saint-Clair. "You read it as if it were scripture." Saint-Clair's tone stayed mild. "It is an instruction." Henri-Auguste's fingers tightened on the armrest. "And you intend to carry it out with speed so no one can object." St. Clair's mouth curved faintly. Objections are noted, my lord. They are simply not always useful. Marguerite felt her heart hammer. She hated the word useful now. It followed her like a shadow. Sabine stood behind her, rigid, as if her spine were the only shield she had left. Marguerite forced her voice to steady. Monsieur, what does supervision mean? St. Clair did not even pretend to soften. It means you will remain where you are placed. Where? Marguerite asked. Eloise answered pleasantly, as if discussing a seating plan. Somewhere you will not be tempted to perform another little scene. Henri Auguste's gaze snapped to Eloise. She performed nothing. She corrected what you broke. Eloise's fan moved once. My lord, your sentiment makes you unwise. Rouvre stepped closer, hands loosely clasped. Cousin, let it go. The girl will be sent away. You will be sent away. Everyone will be spared further embarrassment. Henri Auguste's eyes turned cold. Everyone? Rouvre smiled. Everyone who matters. Marguerite felt heat rise to her face, but she did not look away. Then it is not mercy, it is convenience. St. Clair turned to her as if she were a noise that needed closing. You do not speak in this room unless spoken to. Henri Auguste's voice cut in. She speaks when I permit it. St. Clair raised his brows. My lord, that is precisely the confusion we must correct. Henri Auguste leaned forward slightly in his chair. The movement was controlled, but it changed the room. He looked at St. Clair as if St. Clair were the one being weighed. Very well, Henri Auguste said. Let us correct it properly. St. Clair's eyes narrowed a fraction. Properly? Henri Auguste's voice turned calm. The order states, I must depart for my health. Yes, St. Clair said. And it states Marguerite must be removed from palace service and supervised, Henri Auguste continued. Yes, St. Clair repeated. Henri Auguste nodded once. Then I will take her with me. A silence fell so quickly. It felt like a door slammed. Sabine's breath caught. Marguerite froze, unsure if she had heard correctly. Rouvre let out a soft laugh. Oh, cousin. Eloise sat very still, her smile held in place by effort. You cannot. St. Clair's mildness thinned. My lord, the instruction is explicit. No contact. Henri Auguste's eyes did not flicker. It forbids contact at Versailles. It does not forbid proximity under lawful supervision at my estate. St. Clair's jaw tightened. You are twisting words. Henri Auguste replied, I am reading them. Eloise rose slowly. This is absurd. The court will assume... Henri Auguste cut in, voice sharper. The court will assume whatever you feed it. I will not feed it this. Rouvre's smile remained, but his eyes hardened. You are risking scandal. Henri Auguste looked at him. You enjoy scandal when it is not yours. Rouvre spread his hands. I enjoy peace. And peace requires that you stop protecting a servant as if she were... As if she were human? Marguerite blurted, then shut her mouth too late. St. Clair's gaze snapped to her. Silence. Henri Auguste spoke without raising his voice. Do not silence her for naming the truth. Eloise's tone turned sweet, dangerous. My lord, if you take her with you, you will ruin her. Marguerite's throat tightened. How? Eloise tilted her head. They will call you what they always call a girl who steps too close to rank. They will not forgive you. They will not forget. They will say you sought a title. They will say you trapped him with pity. Marguerite's hands clenched at her sides. I did not. Eloise smiled. No one will care. Henri Auguste's face went still. Then I will make them care. St. Clair exhaled slowly, as if deciding how much force could be applied without appearing forceful. My lord, he said, your departure is meant to be quiet. If you resist, you will invite attention. Henri Auguste replied, You have already invited attention by staging a theft. St. Clair's eyes flicked to the silver piece in Henri Auguste's hand. That is not proven. Henri Auguste held it up. Then prove it. You wanted an inquiry. I accept, but it will be held under my roof, with my notary present and with Father Anselme as witness. At the mention of the priest's name, Eloise's smile tightened. Rouvre's gaze sharpened. A village priest? Cousin, you are grasping at straws. Henri Auguste answered, I am grasping at truth, which you seem to find slippery. St. Clair's voice cooled. You forget your position. Henri Auguste's reply was quiet and somehow more cutting. I remember it. You are the one behaving as if my chair removed my name. Sabine swallowed hard. She looked at Marguerite, then at Henri Auguste, as if seeing him for the first time. Marguerite's voice came out softer. Henri, if you do this, they will come for you harder. Henri Auguste's gaze found hers. They have already come. They simply preferred me silent. He turned back to St. Clair. I will comply with the departure. I will not comply with the separation. St. Clair held his gaze. You cannot command the household authority. Henri Auguste replied, Then let the household authority explain why it fears a proper inquiry. Rouvre gave a small, regretful shake of his head. You are determined to embarrass yourself. Henri Auguste did not look at him. I am determined to stop letting others embarrass me. Eloise stepped forward, voice very low. And if we refuse your request? Henri Auguste's eyes turned to her. Then I will speak publicly tomorrow of how a vicomtesse staged a servant's accusation to punish decency. Eloise's smile wavered for the first time. You would not. Henri Auguste said, Try me. Rouvre's mouth tightened. Cousin. Henri Auguste's gaze cut to him. Do not call me cousin with that tone. St. Clair stared at Henri Auguste for a long moment, then glanced at Eloise, then at Rouvre. A quiet calculation passed among them without words. Finally, St. Clair spoke. Very well. Eloise's eyes narrowed. St. Clair. St. Clair lifted a hand as if soothing her. If the Count departs at first light, and if the girl travels under formal supervision as a temporary ward of his household, the matter may be resolved away from the ballroom. Rouvre frowned. You are allowing this? St. Clair's voice remained controlled. I am containing it. Henri Auguste nodded once. And the inquiry will be held at my estate. St. Clair replied, with written record, with a sealed report returned to Versailles. Henri Auguste said, Agreed. Marguerite's breath shook. She looked at Sabine. Sabine's lips trembled, then pressed into a line. If she goes, Sabine said, I go. I will not let her be alone among men who wish to shape her story. St. Clair's eyes narrowed. Madame Sabine, do not be dramatic. Sabine lifted her chin. I am not dramatic. I am responsible. Henri Auguste glanced at Sabine. Come then, both of you. I will need a household that does not lie to my face. Rouvre let out a soft laugh that did not reach his eyes. What a charming little exodus. Eloise's voice was sugar and frost. Be careful what you invite into your house, my lord. Some guests do not leave. Henri Auguste answered evenly. Some hosts do not bow. St. Clair folded his hands. Then it is decided. The Count departs at dawn. The girl and Madame Sabine will be delivered to his party under escort. No private conversations, no further disturbances. Henri Auguste's gaze hardened. You do not get to forbid me conversation in my own carriage. St. Clair's mouth tightened. Then at least do not create another spectacle. Henri Auguste replied, I have had enough spectacles for one life. Marguerite's knees felt unsteady, but she forced herself to stand straight. She would not fold now. Not after everything. St. Clair gestured toward the door. Return her to the quarters for the night. At first light she will be transferred. Sabine moved first, placing herself slightly between Marguerite and the others. It was a small act, but it felt like loyalty. As Marguerite turned to leave, Henri Auguste spoke softly, only for her. Do not be afraid, he said. Marguerite swallowed. I am. Henri Auguste's eyes held hers. Then be afraid, and still come. Marguerite nodded once. Yes, they took her back through corridors that felt narrower than before. The palace seemed to watch her now, as if it had decided she was no longer part of the floor. In the small room, Sabine shut the door and leaned against it. You realize, Sabine whispered. They will blame you for every rumor that follows him. Marguerite sat slowly. They already do. Sabine's voice tightened. And if he tires of defending you? Marguerite looked down at her hands. Then I will defend myself. Sabine stared at her. You are either brave or foolish. Marguerite's voice was quiet. I think those two are cousins. Sabine snorted despite herself, then covered it with a sigh. Sleep, if you can. We leave early. Marguerite tried. She truly tried, but her mind ran in circles. Henri's face, St. Clair's calm, Eloise's smile, Rouvre's laughter. In the darkness, she whispered, Henri. The name felt less like a danger now, and more like a candle. At dawn, Servants moved like ghosts. Orders were murmured. Wheels creaked softly in the courtyard. There was no music now, no glitter, only the quick, clean efficiency of removal. Marguerite was dressed plainly. Sabine tightened her cloak with practical hands. "Keep your head," Sabine murmured. "They want you to lose it." Marguerite nodded. "I will keep it." An escort led them through a side entrance. In the pale morning, Henri Auguste waited beside a carriage adapted for his chair. An older man stood with him, dressed as a steward, face lined with worry. "My lord," the steward said, "everything is prepared." Henri Auguste nodded. "Gaston, this is Marguerite Lefebvre and Madame Sabine." Gaston bowed stiffly, eyes flicking over them, unsure whether to approve or fear. Henri Auguste added, "They are under my protection." Gaston swallowed. "Yes, my lord." Marguerite stepped forward carefully. "Good morning." Gaston's mouth tightened. "Morning." Sabine muttered under her breath. "He looks like a man who has been told the roof is on fire." Henri Auguste heard and gave a faint, brief exhale that might have been the smallest laugh Marguerite had ever seen from him. They were loaded into the carriage with measured care. An attendant remained close, assigned by St. Clair, eyes sharp and uninterested in comfort. Henri Auguste looked at the man. "You may ride outside." The attendant stiffened. "My instructions?" Henri Auguste's voice cut cleanly. "You will ride outside." The attendant hesitated, then bowed. "Yes, my lord." When the carriage finally moved, the first moments were stiff with caution. Sabine sat upright, hands folded tightly. Marguerite kept her gaze on Henri Auguste, then away, then back again, as if looking too long might be dangerous. Henri Auguste spoke first, quietly. "You did not sleep." Marguerite tried to smile. "Not much." Sabine said, "No one sleeps well after being accused by silk." Henri Auguste's jaw tightened. "They will not keep that accusation." Marguerite hesitated. "How can you be sure?" Henri Auguste's eyes held hers. "Because I will not allow it." Sabine's voice was blunt. "Allowing is easy to say, doing is harder." Henri Auguste nodded. "Yes." Marguerite's hands twisted together. "Why did you do it?" Henri Auguste frowned slightly. "Do what?" "Take me with you," Marguerite said. "You could have complied. You could have let them send me away and kept yourself quiet." Henri Auguste's face went still. "And what would that have made me?" Marguerite swallowed. "Safe." Henri Auguste's voice turned low. "I have been safe for months, and in that safety, I have been reduced." Sabine glanced away, as if those words made her uncomfortable. Henri Auguste continued carefully, as if choosing each word with effort. "When you offered your arm, you did not treat me as a symbol. You treated me as a man who could still decide where he sits." Marguerite's throat tightened. "I only did what was right." Henri Auguste replied, "That is never only." Silence settled again, but it was different now. Not empty, not punishing. It held a strange steadiness. After a while, Sabine cleared her throat. "My lord, forgive my bluntness, but why would St. Clair agree? He never agrees unless it benefits him." Henri Auguste's gaze shifted to the window for a moment, then back. "Because he fears noise, and because he thinks he can control what happens at my estate through papers," Marguerite whispered. "Can he?" Henri Auguste answered, "Not if we keep the record clean." Sabine's eyes narrowed. "We?" Henri Auguste looked at her. "Yes, we." Sabine studied him. "Then you truly intend an inquiry?" Henri Auguste nodded. "With my notary, with my steward, with Father Anselme if he reaches Burgundy in time." Marguerite leaned forward slightly. "You trust Father Anselme?" Henri Auguste's jaw tightened. "I trust him more than I trust smiles." Sabine murmured, "That is wise." Marguerite hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning since the silver was shown. "Henri," she said softly, "who would forge your crest?" Henri Auguste's gaze sharpened. "Someone with access. Someone who benefits if I appear unstable, scandalous, or easily managed." Sabine's voice turned flat. "The Marquis." Henri Auguste did not answer at once. Marguerite whispered, "Is he truly your cousin?" Henri Auguste's mouth tightened. "A distant branch, close enough to circle like a vulture, far enough to pretend innocence." Sabine flinched. No such words. Henri Auguste blinked, then nodded, correcting himself. Close enough to circle. Far enough to deny. Marguerite's hands tightened. What does he want? Henri Auguste's voice was quiet. My lands. My signature. My silence, Sabine asked. And Eloise? Henri Auguste's eyes turned colder. She wants power in any room she enters. If she can show the court she can crush a servant and humble a count in one night, she will dine on that story for months. Marguerite's stomach turned. All for a story. Henri Auguste looked at her. At Versailles, stories are currency. Sabine muttered. And servants are the coins. Marguerite swallowed. Then how do we fight it without becoming like them? Henri Auguste's gaze softened just a fraction. We do not fight with stories. We fight with records. Sabine nodded slowly. That is the only language they cannot laugh away. The journey continued with little speech after that, because the road demanded quiet and their thoughts demanded breath. When they finally reached Burgundy, the air felt different, as if it did not need permission. At the estate, Gaston moved quickly, issuing instructions. A notary arrived by midday, a serious man with ink-stained fingers and a skeptical stare. I am Maître Julien, he said, bowing to Henri Auguste. My lord, I received your message. Henri Auguste nodded. You will conduct an inquiry into the accusation against Marguerite Lefebvre. Maître Julien glanced at Marguerite. A servant? Henri Auguste replied. A woman whose name has been dirtied without proof. Maître Julien's mouth tightened. Very well, Sabine murmured to Marguerite. He looks like a man who counts truth by the grain. Marguerite whispered back, then let him count. They gathered in a small room with a table, a ledger and a single candle even in daylight, because Maître Julien liked to see ink clearly. Henri Auguste placed the silver piece on the table. This was found near her on the night of the ball. Maître Julien leaned in. It bears your crest. Henri Auguste nodded. Altered. Maître Julien took a small magnifying glass and studied it. His expression changed slowly from polite doubt to focused concern. This line, he murmured. Yes. It is not exact. Gaston leaned forward. I told them, my lord, I told them the household silver is marked differently. Henri Auguste looked at Gaston. You have our inventory? Yes, Gaston said quickly, producing a book. Here, every piece. Maître Julien flipped pages, comparing marks. He looked up at last. This is not from your house. Marguerite's breath caught. Then I am cleared? Maître Julien held up a hand. Cleared of theft from this estate, yes. But we must still record how it appeared in Versailles. Henri Auguste nodded. Record that it was placed. Maître Julien's gaze shifted to Marguerite. Tell me, mademoiselle, in simple words. Where were you? When did you leave your tray? Who saw you? Marguerite answered steadily. Sabine added details when needed. Gaston confirmed household marks. Maître Julien wrote without expression, letting ink become their witness. Later, Father Anselme arrived, travel-worn but calm. He bowed to Henri Auguste, then looked at Marguerite with quiet reassurance. I came as quickly as I could, he said. Henri Auguste nodded. Do you know anything that can help us? Father Anselme hesitated, then reached into his coat and produced a folded paper. A note, given to me by a man who was frightened. Maître Julien lifted his chin. A note from whom? Father Anselme's voice was careful. A silversmith's apprentice who once worked near Paris. He recognized the error on the crest when I described it. He said his master was asked to copy a mark for a nobleman's household. He refused. The request went elsewhere. Henri Auguste's eyes narrowed. Did he name the nobleman? Father Anselme shook his head. He would not. But he said the messenger wore a ring with a particular seal. Maître Julien leaned forward. Describe it. Father Anselme described it quietly. Gaston's face tightened. I have seen that seal, Gaston said. Henri Auguste's voice dropped. Where? Gaston swallowed. On letters delivered for the Marquis de Rouvre. A silence followed, heavy and clean. No laughter, no silk, no fans. Marguerite felt her knees weaken, not from fear now, but from the strange relief of being believed. Henri Auguste closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. Then we proceed lawfully. Maître Julien nodded. Yes, we will compile a report. Sealed. And we will request that Versailles produce the names of those who handled the item and those who claim to find it. Sabine whispered. They will resist. Henri Auguste replied, Let them. Resistance is also a record. Marguerite stared at him. You speak as if paper can protect us. Henri Auguste looked at her. Paper cannot, but truth can, when it is pinned down, Father Anselme said quietly. And pinned down, it can no longer be reshaped by whispers. The rest of the day was a current of small, urgent tasks, names written, times fixed, inventories copied. Marguerite answered questions until her voice grew hoarse, yet no one spoke to her as if she were a stain. Even Maître Julien's skepticism softened into respect. At last evening came. The work paused because hands could only write so long. Marguerite stepped out into a quiet corridor to breathe. Sabine followed, rubbing her temples. You are still alive, Sabine muttered. That is something. Marguerite looked at her. You helped me. Sabine snorted. I helped myself. If you burn, I burn. Marguerite's voice softened. That is still help. Sabine hesitated, then said, Do not mistake me. I do not approve of what you did. Marguerite nodded. I know. Sabine's eyes flicked away. But I cannot say it was ugly. Marguerite's throat tightened. Thank you. Sabine waved a hand as if brushing away sentiment. Do not grow tender. It makes you careless. Footsteps approached. Henri Auguste appeared, pushed by Gaston, but he raised a hand to stop the steward at a respectful distance. Leave us, Henri Auguste said. Gaston hesitated. My lord, Henri Auguste's voice was gentle but firm. Leave us. Gaston bowed and withdrew. Sabine stiffened. My lord, I should remain. Henri Auguste looked at her. Madame Sabine, you have guarded her all day. I do not intend to harm her with words. Sabine's eyes narrowed. Words can harm. Henri Auguste nodded. Yes, that is why I will choose mine carefully. Sabine looked at Marguerite, then at Henri Auguste, then stepped back. I will be nearby, she said, as if daring the air to misbehave. When she left, the corridor felt strangely open. Henri Auguste looked at Marguerite for a long moment, not with pity, not with debt, with something quieter that made her chest ache. You should have been frightened, he said. Marguerite swallowed. I was. Henri Auguste's jaw tightened. And you still did it. Marguerite's voice was small. I could not watch you sit there as if you were a lesson. Henri Auguste's gaze dropped briefly, then lifted. I have been a lesson for a long time. Marguerite shook her head. Then perhaps it is time you became something else. Henri Auguste breathed out slowly. Do you know what it is to be looked at and not addressed? Marguerite's throat tightened. Yes. He studied her. How? Marguerite gave a small, bitter smile. As a servant I am looked through. As a country girl I am looked down upon. It is not the same as your suffering, but it is a kind of invisibility. Henri Auguste's voice softened. You refused it. Marguerite's hands clenched. Only for a moment. Henri Auguste replied, A moment is enough to start a change. Marguerite hesitated. Why do you speak to me like this? You could have treated me like everyone else, like a useful object. Henri Auguste's gaze held hers. Because when you stood beside me, you did not ask me to be grateful. You did not ask me to be inspiring. You simply offered me dignity. Marguerite's eyes stung. She blinked quickly. I do not want your pity. Henri Auguste's voice turned quiet, steady. You will not have it. Marguerite swallowed. Then what do I have? Henri Auguste hesitated, as if the answer mattered too much to rush. You have my respect, he said, and my protection, if you want it. Not as a chain, as a choice. Marguerite's breath shook. I do want safety, but I do not want to be owned. Henri Auguste nodded once. Then you will not be, he added even more softly. Marguerite, I do not know what they took from me before this night, but I know what you returned. Marguerite's voice barely rose. What? Henri Auguste's eyes were steady, and in them she saw pain and pride in equal measure. The belief that I could still be chosen. Marguerite's throat tightened so much she could hardly speak. Henri, He lifted a hand slightly, not to stop her, but to steady himself. Do not answer quickly. I'm not asking for promises. I'm only saying the truth. Marguerite nodded, tears held back by sheer will. Then here is mine. I did not do it to be seen. I did it because it was wrong and because, when I looked at you, I felt as if the room was lying. Henri Auguste's mouth tightened, and for a heartbeat, his composure cracked. Yes. They stood in the quiet corridor as if the world had shrunk to a narrow space where honesty could breathe. Henri Auguste spoke again. Tomorrow, we send the sealed report. We request the names. We keep everything clean. Marguerite nodded. And if Versailles refuses? Henri Auguste's gaze sharpened. Then Versailles will have to explain itself. Even the proud dislike being forced into daylight. Marguerite's voice softened. You sound like someone who can fight. Henri Auguste answered, I can resist. There is a difference. Marguerite looked at him. And I can stand beside you. Henri Auguste held her gaze. If you still wish to, after you understand what it will cost. Marguerite's voice was steady now. I understand what it cost to stay silent too. Henri Auguste nodded once as if accepting a vow without demanding it. Then we begin, he said. Marguerite's chest rose with a slow breath. Together. Henri Auguste's eyes softened, just enough to make her heart stumble. Yes, he said quietly. Together. The hearing was not held in a ballroom. It was held at a long table, in a room that smelled only of ink and wax, where no one could hide behind laughter. Marguerite stood beside Madame Sabine, hands folded so tightly her fingers ached. Across from them sat Maître Julien with his ledger open. Father Anselme waited near the window, quiet and watchful. Gaston stood behind Henri Auguste's chair like a wall that had learned to breathe. Henri was there already, placed at the head of the table, not because someone granted him that place, but because the room belonged to him. Maître Julien dipped his pen. We begin. A local magistrate invited for neutrality cleared his throat. Let it be recorded that this inquiry concerns an accusation of theft and impropriety made at Versailles against Marguerite Lefebvre, lately in service, and the use of a silver piece bearing a crest. Maître Julien nodded. So recorded. Mademoiselle Lefebvre, do you understand why you are here? Marguerite swallowed. Yes, sir. Do you maintain your innocence? Yes, she said, voice steady. I did not take anything. Maître Julien's eyes narrowed slightly. And the claim that you approached the Count de Beaumont-Bourgogne without permission? Marguerite glanced at Henri. His gaze held hers, calm and firm. She breathed in. I approached him, she said. I offered my arm in the manner of escort. I did not insult anyone. I did not speak against rank. I only refused to watch him be placed as if he were furniture. The magistrate's brows lifted. Furniture, Sabine murmured. She speaks plainly. Maître Julien tapped his pen once. Plain words are acceptable here. Proceed. Henri's voice cut in, low and controlled. Let it be noted that I accepted her offer. Maître Julien wrote, It is noted. My lord, do you confirm there was no coercion? Henri replied, There was only courage. Marguerite's throat tightened, but she kept her face composed. Maître Julien lifted the silver piece with cloth so his fingers would not smear any mark. This object was said to have been found near the service corridor at Versailles. Gaston leaned forward. It was presented as stolen, yes. Maître Julien turned it toward the light. It bears the Beaumont-Bourgogne crest, but altered. The magistrate leaned in. Altered how? Maître Julien pointed with the tip of his pen. This curve is wrong. This line is shallow. It imitates, but it does not match the house inventory. He slid the estate inventory book forward. Gaston opened it quickly. Here, the correct marking. The magistrate compared them, lips tightening. They are not the same. Maître Julien nodded. Therefore it was not taken from this estate. We now address how such a piece with an imitation of the Count's crest appeared at Versailles near the accused. Marguerite's breath came out shaky. She forced it steady. Father Anselme spoke quietly. May I present what I received? Maître Julien gestured. Yes, Father. Father Anselme produced a folded note and placed it on the table. A man brought this to me after hearing the description of the crest's error. Maître Julien looked to the magistrate. We will treat it as testimony offered under conscience. The magistrate nodded. Read it. Maître Julien read aloud, slowly, The note described an attempt to commission a copied crest, refused by one craftsman, then pursued elsewhere. It described a messenger with a ring bearing a seal. When Maître Julien finished, he looked up. "Father, you also gave a description of the seal. Repeat it." Father Anselme did so carefully. Gaston swallowed hard. "That seal appears on letters from the Marquis de Rouvre." A quiet shiver ran through Marguerite, not fear, but recognition. A puzzle piece clicking into place. Henri's voice stayed steady. "Say it clearly, Gaston." Gaston drew a breath. "I have personally received correspondence with that seal. The Marquis uses it." The magistrate's face tightened. "Then the accusation at Versailles was not merely against this girl, it was a device." Maître Julien nodded. "A device to disgrace a servant and entangle the Count's name." Sabine's voice came out rough. "So they could call her a thief and him foolish for defending her." Henri's jaw tightened. "Or worse," Marguerite felt her stomach twist. "They wanted to make it seem I acted for gain." Maître Julien's gaze turned to her. "Did you?" Marguerite lifted her chin. "No. I had nothing to gain. I would have kept my wage and my quiet if I wanted gain." The magistrate nodded slowly. "A sensible answer." Maître Julien turned a page. "We have also requested by letter the names of those who handled the silver piece at Versailles." Gaston spoke quickly. "A reply came this morning." He placed a sealed envelope on the table. Marguerite's heart began to pound again. Henri's voice was calm. "Open it." Maître Julien broke the seal and read. His eyes moved across the page, then lifted. "The household authority replies that the item was found by a junior footman, passed to Monsieur de Saint-Clair, and handled in the presence of the Vicomtesse de Charny and the Marquis de Rouvre." Sabine let out a short, bitter breath. "So they put their own names in ink." Father Anselme murmured, "Pride is sometimes generous." Maître Julien continued reading. "They add that the girl's removal from service was necessary due to impropriety and disturbance of harmony. So they offer no witness who saw her take the item." The magistrate leaned forward. "No witness." Maître Julien shook his head. "None named." Henri's voice was quiet. "Because none exists." Marguerite's eyes stung. She blinked hard. For days she had carried a fear that truth might not matter. Here in this room truth had weight. It sat on the table with the silver piece and did not move. The magistrate spoke carefully. "Then we have two matters. 1. The accusation of theft is unsupported and contradicted by physical evidence. 2. The Count's crest was imitated, linking the object to his name by false mark, and handled by persons with an interest in the Count's removal from court." Maître Julien nodded. "Exactly." The magistrate looked at Marguerite. "Mademoiselle Lefebvre, I find no cause to call you a thief." Marguerite's breath caught. She barely managed. "Thank you, sir." The magistrate lifted a hand. "There is more." He looked at Henri. "My lord, the report should be sealed and sent to Versailles. Not as a plea, as a record. The court may ignore it, but it will exist." Henri's jaw tightened. "It will exist." Maître Julien pressed wax into a neat pool and took the Count's seal. "Then we conclude with signatures." Gaston signed. Sabine signed, hand trembling but firm. Father Anselme signed. The magistrate signed. Maître Julien slid the quill toward Marguerite. Her fingers shook. She set the tip to the page and wrote her name as clearly as she could. Marguerite Lefebvre. When she finished, she looked up and met Henri's eyes. He did not smile broadly. He simply looked at her as if the world had corrected itself by 1 degree, and that degree mattered. The magistrate rose. "This inquiry is concluded." Maître Julien nodded. "And the conclusion is clear." Sabine exhaled as if she had been holding her breath since Versailles. "So they cannot ruin her with that accusation." Henri's voice was low. "They tried. They failed." Father Anselme murmured, "Today, yes." Gaston asked, "My lord, will you send this at once?" Henri nodded. At once. The room began to empty. The magistrate left with a final bow. Maître Julien gathered his papers. Gaston carried the sealed report as if it were a fragile treasure. Father Anselme lingered a moment, then touched Marguerite's shoulder gently. "You stood when you could have bowed," he said. Marguerite's voice was small. "I trembled the entire time." Father Anselme's eyes softened. "Trembling and standing can coexist." Then he withdrew, leaving Marguerite and Henri in the quiet that followed. Sabine remained near the door, stubborn as a guard. Henri looked at her. "Madame Sabine." Sabine lifted her chin. "My lord." Henri's voice was calm. "Give us a moment." Sabine hesitated. "Words can be traps." Henri replied, "So can silence." Sabine's mouth tightened, then she gave a stiff nod. "One moment." She stepped outside and shut the door, but Marguerite knew she would remain close enough to hear if a chair scraped. Marguerite stood with her hands clasped. Now that the hearing was over, her body remembered it had been afraid. Her knees felt loose. Henri spoke softly. "Come closer." Marguerite obeyed, stopping at a respectful distance. Henri. His name no longer felt like a forbidden thing. It felt like a choice. He looked at her hands. "You are still holding yourself as if someone might accuse you." Marguerite tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "Perhaps someone will." Henri's gaze sharpened. "Not here." Marguerite swallowed. "They will still speak in Versailles." Henri nodded once. "Yes," she whispered. "And they will say I tried to climb." Henri's jaw tightened. "They will say it, because they cannot imagine a servant acts from conscience." Marguerite's throat tightened. "Conscience does not buy bread." Henri said, "No, but it buys something else." Marguerite looked at him. "What?" Henri hesitated. His composure, so practiced, wavered slightly, as if the words he wanted were heavier than all the papers in the other room. "A future," he said, "if it is chosen carefully." Marguerite's pulse quickened. "Henri," he lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to refuse. He did not touch her yet. He waited, watching her face. Marguerite breathed in. She stepped closer. His fingertips touched the back of her hand, barely, as if testing whether the world would punish him for tenderness. It did not. Henri's voice dropped. "When you offered your arm at Versailles, you gave me something I had stopped expecting." Marguerite whispered, "You did not owe them your silence." Henri's eyes held hers. "I had convinced myself I did." He paused, then said very quietly, "I was wrong." Marguerite felt her eyes sting again. "You were injured. You were surrounded by people who smiled as they pressed you into a corner." Henri's mouth tightened. "And still I let them." Marguerite shook her head. "You survived them." Henri replied, "Survival is not living." The words struck her with their plain truth. She swallowed hard. Henri continued, "I cannot change my body by will alone. I have tried. I have raged against it in private. It does not yield." Marguerite's voice softened. "I do not need it to yield." Henri's gaze flickered, surprised. "You say that now?" "I said it at Versailles," Marguerite replied. "I did not offer my arm because I saw a chair. I offered it because I saw you." Henri's breath caught. For a moment, he looked as if he might look away, but he did not. "What do you want, Marguerite?" he asked. "Not what you think is proper, not what you think you should say. What do you want?" Marguerite's hands trembled in his. She forced herself to speak plainly, the way she had in the hearing. "I want to be safe," she said, "but not locked away. I want my work to be honest. I want my name to be mine, and I want to choose where I belong." Henri's voice was low. "And where do you belong?" Marguerite's throat tightened until the answer almost failed her. She looked at him, at the steadiness in his face, at the man who had been made a spectacle and still found the strength to stand in law and truth. "With you," she said, "if you will have me. Not as a servant who owes you, as a woman who chooses you." Henri's fingers tightened gently. "I do not want you out of gratitude," Marguerite whispered, "nor do I want you out of pity." Henri nodded once. "Good." He drew a breath. "Then I must say this properly." Marguerite blinked. "Properly?" Henri's mouth tightened, almost a smile. "Yes. There are rules I do not despise. Only the ones that exist to crush." Marguerite's voice came out breathless. "Henri, what are you doing?" He shifted slightly in his chair, straightening his back as if he were preparing to face a room full of nobles again, but this time on his own ground. He said, "I have been spoken about as if I were half a man. I have been handled, managed, and relocated as if my name were a burden to others." Marguerite's chest ached. Henri continued, "And then you placed your arm where the court wanted emptiness. You made them look at what they were doing." Marguerite whispered, "It cost me everything." Henry's eyes sharpened. Then I will not let the cost be meaningless. He paused, his voice softened, and the hardness in his eyes turned into something warmer, something that scared her more than cruelty ever had because it was hope. Marguerite Lefebvre, he said, I cannot offer you a life without whispers, but I can offer you a life where whispers do not decide our worth. Marguerite's breath caught. I can offer you a home where your name is spoken with respect, he continued. A household where you are not ordered into silence. A future where you are not hidden to make others comfortable. Her eyes filled. She did not wipe them. She could not. Henri's voice lowered further, intimate and steady. And I can offer you my heart, which I thought was finished. You proved it was not. Marguerite's lips parted, but no words came. Henry held her hand as if it were the only vow he could make with certainty. Will you marry me? The question did not sound like a command. It sounded like a man asking to be chosen, truly chosen, with no audience to applaud. Marguerite's heart hammered. For a moment she saw Versailles again, the fans, the smiles, the trap. She saw all the reasons to be afraid. Then she saw the ink on the ledger. She saw truth recorded. She saw herself standing and not breaking. She whispered, yes. Henri's breath left him, slow and shaking, as if he had been bracing for refusal and did not know how to receive acceptance. Yes, he repeated, almost as if he needed to hear it again. Marguerite's voice grew steadier. Yes, Henri, I will. A soft knock came at the door. Sabine's voice cautious. Are you alive in there? Marguerite let out a small laugh through tears. Yes, Madame Sabine. The door opened a crack and Sabine looked in, suspicious, then saw Marguerite's face and froze. What happened? Sabine demanded, as if ready to fight the air itself. Henri answered calmly, I asked her to marry me. Sabine stared. You what? Henri's gaze did not waver. And she said yes. Sabine's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Marguerite, searching for fear, for regret, for some sign of coercion. Marguerite lifted her chin. I chose it. Sabine's eyes stung, which made her scowl harder. You are impossible, she muttered. Then, very quietly, and you are brave. Marguerite whispered, Will you stand with me? Sabine swallowed. Someone must keep you from setting the house on fire with your conscience. Henri's mouth tightened, amused. Then we are fortunate to have you. Sabine stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind her, suddenly brisk as if briskness could conceal emotion. My lord, she said, if you mean it, we must do it properly. Henri nodded. Properly. Sabine pointed a finger toward Marguerite. And you, mademoiselle, do not weep as if sorrow has won. Weeping is for funerals. Marguerite sniffed. Then what is this? Sabine's voice softened unwillingly. Relief, Henri said quietly. Joy. Sabine waved a hand. Yes, yes, joy. But joy still requires arrangements. Gaston knocked and entered without waiting this time, carrying the sealed report. My lord, the messenger rides in an hour. He stopped when he saw their faces. His brows lifted. Have I missed something? Henri replied, You have. I am to be married. Gaston blinked. Married? Marguerite felt her cheeks warm. If the household allows it. Gaston looked at Henri, then bowed, very slowly. Then the household allows it, my lord. Sabine muttered. We will need a dress that is not a kitchen apron. Marguerite protested. Madame Sabine. Sabine cut her off. Do not argue. If you enter marriage with a count, you will not do it looking like a punishment. Henri's voice was gentle. She will enter it looking like herself. Sabine glared. And herself will be properly dressed. Father Anselme returned later that day, called quietly by Sabine, who pretended it was purely logistical. He listened to Henri's request without surprise, only with calm attention. You wish to marry, Father Anselme said. Henri answered, Yes. As soon as you can, Father. Father Anselme looked at Marguerite. And you, child? Marguerite's voice was steady. Yes. Father Anselme nodded. Then we will not delay what is honest. The marriage was not grand. It did not need gold to prove truth. A few household witnesses gathered. Gaston stood stiffly, eyes suspiciously bright. Sabine stood beside Marguerite, tugging her sleeves into neatness as if the entire sacrament depended on a straight seam. Henri wore a simple coat, darker than court finery, and for once he looked comfortable in his own dignity. Marguerite wore a modest dress borrowed and altered in haste, but it fit her well enough, and Sabine had tied a burgundy ribbon at her wrist with hands that pretended not to tremble. Father Anselme spoke softly, the words clear. Henri-Auguste de Beaumont-Bourgogne, do you take Marguerite Lefebvre to be your wife, to honor her and stand beside her in truth? Henri's voice did not waver. I do. Father Anselme turned to Marguerite. Marguerite Lefebvre, do you take Henri-Auguste de Beaumont-Bourgogne to be your husband, to honor him and stand beside him in truth? Marguerite's throat tightened. She looked at Henri, at his steady gaze, and felt the strange wonder of being seen without being measured. I do, she said. Father Anselme nodded. Then what has been chosen in truth, let no whisper undo. Gaston cleared his throat, then said awkwardly, Amen. Sabine snapped, Say it like a man. Gaston repeated, louder, Amen. A laugh escaped someone, and it warmed the room without mocking. Afterward, when the small gathering dispersed, Henri and Marguerite remained near the doorway of the chapel room, hands joined. Sabine hovered nearby, pretending to arrange nothing in particular. Henri spoke quietly to Marguerite. Are you frightened now? Marguerite breathed in. Yes. Henri's thumb brushed lightly over her knuckles, a small, careful touch. And still. Marguerite lifted her chin. And still. Henri's mouth tightened into the faintest smile. Good. Gaston appeared again, bowing. My lord, the messenger is ready. Henri nodded. Send the report. Gaston hesitated. And if Versailles answers with anger? Henri's gaze was steady. Let them. They do not own this house. Sabine muttered. They think they own the world. Henri replied. Then we will teach them the world has corners they cannot reach. Father Anselme said quietly. Truth is one such corner. Marguerite looked down at her joined hands. And love, she whispered, surprising herself with the word. Henri heard it. His voice softened. Yes, love too. The messenger rode out with the sealed report, and with it went the last thread tying Marguerite's fate to Versailles' whims. Whatever came next would come, but not as a silent sentence passed over her head. That evening, Henri asked Sabine to sit with them for supper. Sabine protested loudly, then sat anyway, eyes watchful, as if she did not trust happiness to remain. You realize, Sabine said, the court will talk. Marguerite replied, let them. Sabine's brows rose. That is easy to say when you have a roof. Henri answered, she has a roof because I chose to give it and because she chose to accept it. Sabine stared at him. You are a stubborn man. Henri replied, I learned from the best. Sabine narrowed her eyes. From whom? Henri looked at Marguerite. From her. Marguerite's cheeks warmed. Henri. Sabine made a small sound of disgust. Do not look at each other like that at the table. Henri's voice was dry. Madame Sabine, we are married. Sabine pointed her spoon. Married people still have manners. Marguerite laughed then, really laughed, and the sound felt like a door opening. Later, when the candles burned low and Sabine finally retreated, Henri and Marguerite sat in the quiet. No court. No overseer. No fan snapping like judgment. Henri said softly, I am sorry I pulled you into my war of whispers. Marguerite shook her head. It was never only yours. It was a room deciding who counts as human. Henri's gaze held hers. And you refused their decision. Marguerite's voice was gentle. So did you. Henri exhaled slowly. I thought I was finished. Marguerite leaned closer, careful, and placed her hand over his. You were not finished. You were waiting. Henri's eyes softened, and for once the pain in them did not stand alone. It shared space with something tender and strong. He whispered, You changed everything with a simple arm. Marguerite whispered back, And you changed everything by believing me. Henri squeezed her hand gently. We will live quietly. Marguerite nodded. Quietly does not mean silently. Henri's mouth tightened, affectionate. No, not anymore. In the months that followed, Versailles' whispers did arrive, as all whispers do, late and hungry. But they found no purchase on a household built on record, choice, and truth. Marguerite learned to walk through rooms without shrinking. Henri learned to speak without asking permission from those who had treated him as an ornament, and if anyone watching from afar wondered how a count and a waitress could become equals without breaking the world, the answer was simple. They did not break the world. They only refused to let it break them. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you like the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.